Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Yusuf Aram. In a rare diplomatic break, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Turkmenistan, all members of the Organization of Turkic States, have opened formal ties with Southern Cyprus. Many are calling it a sign that Central Asian countries have caved to EU pressure in recognizing the Greek Cypriot Administration. How much of a diplomatic setback will this be for Turkish Cypriots and their desires for greater recognition? The move followed the EU Central Asia Summit in Samarkand, where Brussels pledged a $13 billion investment in return for deeper political alignment. 4 Central Asian nations agreed to appoint ambassadors to Nicosia. Turkish media calls it an EU play to undercut Turkish influence in the region. Only Turkey recognizes the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, as its years-long push for a two-state solution have stalled. Earlier this month, Greek and Turkish Cypriot leaders met under UN mediation, with talks set to continue. But with Ankara's closest cultural allies now recognizing Southern Cyprus, could there be a crack forming in Turkic unity? To discuss the policy shift in Central Asia, joining me now from Prague is Central Asia analyst Bruce Pannier. From Baku, Farid Shafiev, chairperson of the Center for Analysis of International Relations, and from Lefkosia, the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, Said Aksit, an associate professor at Near East University. Gentlemen, thanks for joining me. Now, Bruce, I want to start with the EU Central Asia Summit. What happened there? Why are we seeing this big policy shift? What was promised, and was this kind of pay for play?
Well, to be fair, there was already indications months in advance about what was going to happen. The EU has had discussions with the Central Asians about, recognition of the northern part of Cyprus. It's just a fact that, the Central Asia is looking for some investment right now. And the EU was last year unveiled a package that was worth 10 billion euros that was for transportation and connectivity. And this year they unveiled another package that was worth 12 billion euros. So, the Central Asians, they're trying to make the most out of what they got. They advanced their relations with the European Union, which was great. And the European Union is an important partner of Central Asia. It's a leading investor and trade partner of Kazakhstan, for example. So you would figure that they were going to boost that relationship. It was unfortunate that in the process, again, this was telegraphed. We knew this was coming, but the Central Asians signed on to recognizing Greece as the owner of Cyprus.
Mm-hmm. Farid, Bruce said the Central Asian nations are trying to make the best of what they got. Is this the best of what they got? Because when you look at their alliances, the Organization of Turkic States is probably the alliance that's most tightly knit, or at least you would expect it to be the most tightly knit. But it looks like at the first stumbling block, 4 of the member states have basically, let's not say abandoned ship, but definitely acted outside of the interests of one of its observing members.
First of all, I would like to underline, I don't see really big drama here. Definitely there is some disappointment in Turkey and even in Azerbaijan and among some Central Asian experts. But overall, we have to acknowledge several factors. First, Greek Cyprus is a member of United Nations, and most of the Central Asian states, they recognized Cyprus in 90s. They established diplomatic relations, not the missions, diplomatic missions, but relations in 90s. The second, in the meantime, Turkic unity, what is today's Organization of Turkic States, went through the big progress from the summit meetings in 90s to the Turkic Council 15 years ago, and now the full-fledged international organizations. Turkish Cyprus is not full member, it's just observer. And I think this development should be taken in the context of what's going on geopolitically in Central Asia, very complex relationship with Russia. I know there is also resistance to Turkic unity from other actors, Iran and some other actors, including in European Union, they're pressing this issue because of some problems with Turkey and with definitely with the Cyprus issue. But I don't think this is something which undermines Turkic unity. It is a problem which I think will be dealt with. I was recently at an Antalya forum, and I think there's some Turkish diplomats and experts quite, understand the situation.
Said, how much of a setback is this for Turkish Cypriots? Because, I mean, when I look at the member states and the observing members, for example, if I heard that Hungary recognized the Greek Cypriot Administration, that would be completely normal for me. They're an EU member state. The Greek Cypriots are EU members, so that would be normal. But for the other 4 Central Asian nations to go out and open diplomatic missions over there and formally recognize, that seems like a much bigger hit. Even if they secretly recognize or informally recognize, taking that formal step seems like a big hit for the Turkish Cypriots.
Yes, especially regarding the two-state solution and recognition of the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus. I mean, starting with the Organization of Turkic States members, right? That's one of the points that we can make there. But of course, we need to clarify something here. When we're talking about recognition, as Farid said, most of the Central Asian countries recognized Cyprus. Republic of Cyprus back in the 1990s, and this is basically a diplomatic upgrade. And I would say it is not a big surprise because Kazakhstan announced officially that it would open an embassy in Nicosia in January, right? But it has not become actually a big deal by then. The Kazakh ambassador to Nicosia presented his credentials in late February, and this was not a big deal as well for the Northern Cypriot officials, Turkish Cypriot officials as well. I think the reflections that actually the declaration created following the European Union Central Asian countries, which refers to certain UN resolutions here. That's the major blow.
Mm-hmm. Bruce, I want to give an example. NATO. Let's say a NATO member country recognized Catalonia in Spain. That would obviously not go well with the Spanish. That would be a big break inside of NATO, probably getting headlines. So I think this is kind of a very similar situation. How much is this going to fragment the unity of the Organization of Turkic States? Is this something that the organization can recover from?
Certainly, the example of hypothetical example of Catalonia being recognized by NATO would be a unique situation. As Farid and Said have already kind of alluded to, I don't think this will have a huge impact on the Organization of Turkic States. Let's look at Central Asia, the groups that they're in, for instance. All the Central Asian states are a member of the Commonwealth of Independent States. It's Russian-led, everyone would agree with that, and yet the Central Asian states have not recognized the breakaway republics in eastern Ukraine or South Ossetia, Abkhazia, the way the Russians do. They're also in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which some of the countries are part of the Organization of Turkic States. Some of the countries are part of the Commonwealth of Independent States. And yet you have China and India and Pakistan and this other organization. So I think you have to temper this a little bit. The Organization of Turkic States, in its current form, has only been around for since late 2021. It's existed in various forms for 30 years, but it's the real organization that it is now, which is a much stronger organization than it ever was, has only existed since 2021, and it's got a lot of momentum. I think it's going to go forward, but you can be a member of an organization and still have an independent policy towards certain countries. Like I use the example of the CIS and Russia and what's happening in Ukraine and in the Caucasus. So I don't think it's going to have a major effect on the Organization of Turkic States. In fact, I would expect the Organization of Turkic States to even grow much stronger and become more prominent. You mentioned at the start that they have so much in common, which is something that Central Asian states don't share with a lot of other groupings that they're in. I mean, they are all Turkic peoples. They share a common heritage. The language is intelligible across the board for them. So it's the early stages for the OTS. This is possibly a blip, but it's also realpolitik. The Central Asians are free to practice their own foreign policies they see fitting their own national interests.
Farid, as Bruce just mentioned, the majority of the, I don't want to say establishment, but that really tight-knit unity inside the Organization of Turkic States, really only 4 to 5 years old. Before that, much more loose connections as the Turkic Council. Was it too early for Turkey to push to have the Turkish Cypriots admitted into the Organization of Turkic States? Should the Turks have waited a couple more years until that unity was better formed?
Well, it's a good question, but let me start with a bit of note. You said about Catalonia. I would say, bringing our example, Kosovo. Some EU members recognize Kosovo as independent state, some of EU members not. But I don't think it creates the big, division within European Union. So it's this, agenda item in many questions. The same here, though I know for Turkey it's very, very big question. The second, before answering this question, I have to underline that the Turkic states, including Central Asians, they supported Turkey on many important issues like Turkish action in Syria, the fight against PKK, and many others. But there are some items, let's say Gaza and some others, that the support is sometimes not so vocal. It's here also, it's very sensitive issue, whether it was pushed in time or we should have waited for some time. It's hard to answer. I just would like also to underline that the Turkic states like Central Asia and Azerbaijan, we've been part of the Soviet Union where Russia tried to be a big brother, so-called big brother. So now independent states were very careful not to have any other big brother, but rather than equal partners. And I think Turkish diplomats doing fine job to ensure that this partnership is equal. Maybe we need really to adjust, as you alluded also, not to push certain issues, including Northern Cyprus, too fast. But I can tell that in Hungary in May will be informal summit of Turkic states, and it's expected that the observer, the Northern Cyprus, will be also present.
Saeed, both Bruce and Farid are saying that we shouldn't over-exaggerate what's going on, that it's not that important. Do you agree with that? And also, what's next for the Turkish Cypriots? I mean, what are they going to do at the next summit when they sit down with these 4 member states?
Good points made, actually, there. Well, we have to point out first that there is an expectation for the Council of Elders of the Organization of Turkic States to meet in Northern Cyprus at the beginning of May. So that's actually one of the positive points that we see. The other issue that we need to point out is perhaps the realpolitik that Bruce has emphasized here. The fact that actually the leaders have been silent. I mean, the leaders in Turkey, the government in Turkey, as well as, it took about 10, 11 days for the, officials to respond here as well. We see that the interest is actually to solve this issue in private, right, among the members of the Organization of Turkic States. That's what we see. And of course, we need to establish the fact that given actually realpolitik, it's only reasonable that we can actually expect pragmatism to be one of the main factors that, that is established for the organization member states as well. I mean, as Farid also emphasized, I mean, there are issues that these countries are, are in full agreement, and there are issues that they do not agree at all as well. From the very beginning, we can say that the membership of TRNC was actually one of such issues, despite actually going ahead with the observer status for TRNC. I mean, how do we figure this out? Basically, we can say that Kazakhstan's decision not to invite Northern Cyprus to the summit in 2023 was actually a different point, right? And later, Azerbaijan's decision to include TRNC and actually welcome President Tatar with full court was another position. So we actually need to differentiate that, and we need to note actually that pragmatism as well. I think this is also very much in the line with the possibilities of establishing certain common interests, especially with the EU too. I mean, thinking about connecting Central Asian countries without Azerbaijan and Turkey to European Union is almost impossible, right? And we see that such an agreement, such agreements, let's say, put forward within the context of the declaration of EU Central Asian countries can only be validated or realized through the participation of Azerbaijan and Turkey too, which would bring benefits to Turkey and Azerbaijan too. We have to note that as well.
Bruce, what's driving this reinvigoration in EU Central Asian relations, and what's on the agenda for the EU? What exactly are they hoping to accomplish by improving these relations, especially outside of energy? I can understand the energy, the natural gas, the oil, but more geopolitically.
But the energy aside, although at this point I should mention that critical raw materials are a big way up on the agenda for both Central Asia and Europe. Europe wants them, Central Asia has them, but Central Asia needs help in developing them. And what the EU's offer, or part of this latest package, is to set up the means of production. So the EU is not looking to buy raw materials so much as it is set up factories and plants that will actually process these critical raw materials and then export it to Europe, ready to go, and certainly at a higher price. But without a doubt, I think that one of the primary interests of EU Central Asian cooperation right now is transportation and trade. The middle corridor, if you want to call it that, or the Trans-Caspian International Trade Route. I mean, these are big things. I think that plays a big factor in how Turkey sees the situation right now too. All right, they have their own specific interests with Northern Cyprus, but Turkey stands to become a hub of trade and transport. If the Central Asian infrastructure and the Caucasus infrastructure is expanded and can start handling bigger volumes, a lot of that is going to end up going into Turkey and then over across into Europe, into the European Union countries, for example. So that's huge for both Central Asia and for China. I mean, just in terms of transit fees, goods shipped between China and Europe will bring in a lot of money for the Central Asians, without a doubt. But also, and Azerbaijan too, but also the Central Asians have an export market that they can export to. We know that there's complications with exporting goods through Russian territory. So the European Union is helping to create and actually expand an existing trade network to bring bigger volumes of goods through there, including goods from Central Asia going to Europe and European goods that might be headed towards Central Asia or further to China.
Mm-hmm. Fareed, U.S. President Donald Trump, tariffs on China right now, tariffs on much of the world, that obviously could be negotiated. A tough stance towards the BRICS and the SCO, where geographically many of the member states are either Central Asian nations as well, or in that geography, you have a very important corridor, the middle corridor connecting China to the EU. Is Trump going to be good for Central Asia, which indirectly the Organization of Turkic States, or is it going to be a tough 3.5 years?
Well, let me underline. I think from political point of view, most of Central Asian states and Azerbaijan, they are fine with Trump administration. So I don't see any political problems. Regarding economic and trade, the United States is not the major trade partner. The major trade partner for Central Asia and Azerbaijan, other actors for Central Asia now is China, and the second Russia. For Azerbaijan is European Union, Turkey, and etc. So, however, I think in that geography, despite all these trade wars, these countries will continue relationship with immediate neighbors, including China. By the way, President of Azerbaijan visiting China today and tomorrow. In the meantime, from the security point of view, from some other aspects, Trump administration will be developing I don't think they will have a big impact from trade wars. It will impact general economy, global economy, and that in a way will impact certain economies in Central Asia and Azerbaijan. But again, I don't see that they will be hit hard by that.
Mm-hmm. Said, Trump has also had a big push for peace in Ukraine. Now, obviously, Russia has been bogged down with fighting on its border over the past 3 years. Is less Russian concentration on the Central Asian, South Caucasus, Eastern Mediterranean geography a good thing for that region, or will peace and more Russian engagement in that region complicate things?
Well, I mean, that's a big question because, I mean, one of the things that we have to say here is that Turkey tried to work through Central Asia by overtaking, the power vacuum that was left by the Soviet Union in early 1990s. That didn't work. Right, and I don't think it would work by ignoring Russia in that region. It will have somehow an influence in the region, but of course, the involvement of the European Union will certainly create a sort of certain limits to that as well, which would create benefits for perhaps not only Turkey, Central Asian countries, but Russia as well. I believe actually the Russian involvement in the region, or Trump's tariff wars can actually create a circumstances where these countries can make the best out of the trade wars and the struggle for power, if they actually can carry on a very delicate balancing act. That's one of the main issues that we need to see there. I mean, in the context of EU Central Asia relations, this balancing act somehow tilted because of the Cyprus issue. When we look at the reactions in the last couple of weeks, but of course, I mean, given the increasing number of major powers, these states do have the possibility to establish stronger relations actually with various major powers to create benefits that they need in terms of trade as well as investments in this sense. And in terms of, the development perspectives that they're interested in. I'm sure that, the trade wars is going to limit them less when compared to the other parts of the world. And actually, establishment of perhaps peaceful relations in Ukraine is only going to help that.
Mm-hmm. Bruce, the EU-Turkey relationship now, there's been talk about that rekindling as well. A new European security architecture has been talked about, the migrant situation, Turkey's role in that, counterterrorism, a lot of issues where Turkey and the EU do see eye to eye. Do you think that EU talks or membership talks could be rekindled? How do you see the distance between Brussels and Ankara right now?
You were just talking about the U.S. President Donald Trump a while ago. The U.S. is becoming an unreliable partner in the sense that it's unpredictable which way it's going. And you have, you still have the war in Russia's war in Ukraine going on. There's a lot of things happening. So there's something to be said for stability. Reaching out to Ankara, a better relationship between Brussels and Ankara would be a blessing at this particular time. If you could offer stability. I mean, you mentioned certainly the security factor. I mean, this has got to be a question on the minds of European Union officials of what's going forward. The U.S. is giving mixed signals on its NATO participation, its relations with Europe in general. You have a country that's been trying to get into the European Union for some time that is a member of NATO, so there's already a familiarity there in terms of the military sphere. You mentioned the potential for migrant laborers. Europe has an aging population. I mean, they're going to need to inject some youth into this to keep working. Turkey seems to check a lot of the boxes that the European Union is looking for assurances on at the moment. I would expect that the two sides will become much closer. How far they will be able to go, I don't know. Erdogan's style of leadership is not exactly what Brussels could approve of publicly. However, we've certainly seen numerous examples in the past of being able to finesse the relationship to get a desired goal for both parties.
Bruce, Farid, Said, thanks for joining me. That's all the time we have for today. And that's all for this edition of Straight Talk with me, Yusuf Aram. If you got any comments, please share them with us on X at Straight Talk TRT. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can find more exclusive content. Until next time, take care and goodbye.